This week on Quality Digest Live, we speak with Effy Torborg of High QA about the game-changing aspects of Quality 4.0.
Plus, why you should define your question before you solve a problem. Imagine that.
That's a good idea.
That and more when we come back.
Today's episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Exemplar Global's International Auditor Symposium, the ultimate online conference for auditing professionals. Visit exemplarglobal.org for more info.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for March 9th, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. All right, well, we're going to start this week with a recent study looking at top-of-the-mind issues for more than 25,000 business leaders worldwide. The Global Leadership Forecast 2018, 25 Research Insights to Fuel Your People Strategy is the full name of the survey, which comes to us from the Conference Board and two of their other partnered research companies that work with them on these types of studies. Now, the study in this case indicates that the following 6 general, what they call megatrends, are affecting organizational leadership around the world. And these 6 things I want to take a look at one by one because they're important, and maybe spend a minute or two looking at and talking about what they're all about. The first one of these megatrends is digital is reshaping the workforce. And according to the research here, digital pioneers are financially outperforming other companies in their space. And this survey really looks at things from a financial framework. So you have to kind of keep that in mind and be talking about outperformance several times here and looking at these 6 megatrends. The second one is data. Data is creating a more inclusive, agile, and fair workplace. And what this really means is that organizations with more women in leadership roles are more likely to have sustained and profitable growth. The third one of these is a diverse, purpose-driven culture drives success. And purpose-driven companies are going to consistently outperform their competitors in the market, those that really have an idea about what they're doing and why. They're not just out there making money, they have a reason for it, a very specific reason for doing what they're doing. The fourth one is do-it-yourself, DIY. It doesn't work. Organizations with formalized mentoring programs tend to be more successful. So you want to really kind of standardize and templatize that idea of helping to kind of onboard and mentor your people that you're bringing into the organization. Don't just wing it because you're not going to get the outcomes that you really want. Fifth is finding new sources of leadership potential is crucial. This is a big one. Strong development of leaders below the senior levels is correlated with better financial performance, very strongly correlated. And the sixth and final one is human resources HR is losing its influence. And what the survey says is that although organizations with outstanding people analytics tend to outperform their peers, many HR departments are lacking in digital skills, and that hampers the widespread adoption of these analytics. And of the 6 megatrends I just mentioned there, the one that's really called out for special attention is number 5, because it turns out that this idea that the thing that's keeping top executives up at night is the concern about finding their next generation of leaders. And that came up time and time again where, of all the strategic things they're looking at, the thing they're really worried about is, well, who is going to replace me? If I'm the CEO, if I'm the CFO, and we've had a successful run, well, what happens when I retire?
Right.
I mean, I'm 60. And maybe it's my company, or maybe I've been on the board or whatever. I'm a top executive and we've had a lot of success. But now, who is it? Who am I mentoring? Again, through those formalized mentoring programs, who am I mentoring that's coming up behind me that when I leave is going to be able to continue that success? Right. That's a big issue.
And when I think, and it's funny, usually when we talk about these, they're usually talking about large organizations, but I would say that particular one is even more important for small companies because and look, 98% of the companies in the United States are small companies, 98%, less than 50 people. So for those companies, very often the person who started the company is the person who leads the company. Now the company is successful, he retires, now you've got, a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen employees that are left possibly in the lurch when the head honcho decides, oh boy, I'm tired of this. And, you know, do you shutter the doors? Well, no, but has he or she groomed somebody to take that position? Yeah, it's a big deal for small companies in particular.
Yeah, succession planning, really key thing here. So that's what's keeping people up at night if you're an executive at one of these companies. So for more information on the story, you can visit online at www.conference-board.org, or you can click on the story link just below the video player screen right down there.
All right. So I think most of us, I do, geeks get a bit excited about all the stuff we do in space. Space is exciting. We watch, video about the International Space Station, or, recently a Tesla on the end of Elon Musk's latest
Spaceman.
Spaceman.
Spaceman. He's still up there somewhere.
And sure, and all of us are probably familiar, and I do it a lot, 3D satellite views on Google Maps, where you can kind of go over a city. It's really cool stuff, but it's all done with satellites, right? It's amazing the stuff that we do in space, and we put a lot of stuff in space. A whole lot of stuff in space.
Yep.
It's up there just floating around. And, well, not exactly floating, but we'll get to that in a bit. And not just satellites, but bits and pieces of satellites, left over from satellites, nuts and bolts, space gloves.
I'll just leave that here.
It's like, it's space, it's big, right?
Whatever.
Get this, it's estimated that there are roughly 100 million pieces of debris larger than a millimeter. It's about that big,
pretty small,
floating around up there. 500,000 at bigger than 1 centimeter. So 1 centimeter is a little under half an inch, right?
Yeah.
Most of these fall back to Earth eventually. Some burn up on re-entering our atmosphere. But while they are up there, they aren't exactly floating. They're moving at about 17,000 miles per hour. Yeah, so they're, really fast. So even the smallest chip of paint can do damage if it hits something that isn't moving at that same speed. Now, everything up in space, if it's in an orbit, it's moving fast, but they may not be on the same path. They may be faster, slower, and it doesn't take much, once they collide, for something bad to happen. So, all that space junk, there is ongoing research on how to track and capture this space junk. And one that we thought was pretty interesting is a combination space harpoon and net being developed by the UK Surrey Space Centre. It's called Remove Debris. Very imaginative name.
Creative, sure.
What do we call it? Remove debris. And it works using either a net or a harpoon to capture space junk. It's kind of like fishing in space.
How fun.
How fun is that?
Without the beer.
Without the beer. So there's kind of two different methods. The net is shot at debris and kind of captures it and surrounds it and holds it. The harpoon is used for maybe larger targets where they shoot a harpoon at it, it hits it, and then captures the target that way, captures the bigger piece of junk that way. And then at the end of that, they deploy a large sail. I didn't realize this. Well, so it's in higher orbits, it works as a solar sail, so it can be affected by solar radiation to either slow down or speed up. And in lower orbits, there actually is enough atmosphere that the sail can also use to retard the spacecraft. And the purpose of that is, once it's collected some junk, you want it to deorbit. You want to slow down, drop out of orbit, burn up going through the atmosphere, which burns up both the satellite, the collector, and all the junk that it has collected. So that's the idea behind it. So I don't know, I thought that was
cool.
That was kind of a cool idea. By the way, if you're wondering, just how often does stuff collide? Not very often, but when it does, it can be spectacular. In 2009, an Iridium-33 and a Cosmos 2251 collided in space at 26,000 miles per hour.
Wow.
Needless to say, that was not a fender bender, and those two pieces of junk that were up there created 1,000 pieces of junk once they impacted each other and blew up all over, pieces of stuff all over the place.
Wow.
So it does happen, not very often. They do track this and try to maneuver satellites out of the way of stuff, but they got to get rid of some of the junk that's up there. So we thought that was fun.
That's nuts.
It's nuts, really nuts.
100 million pieces bigger than a millimeter, and 500,000 bigger than a centimeter.
Yes.
That's a lot of junk, man.
That's a lot of junk.
That's a lot of stuff.
And it's going really fast.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, you've seen the movie Gravity?
Exactly,
Bullock, right?
Exactly.
That's when I first thought about that problem. Like, really? Could that happen?
There's actually a name for that. It's called oh gosh, the Kessler cascade or something like that. The idea that, well, like you saw in gravity, it's kind of theoretical, but it's the idea that you have one piece of junk, it hits something else, which creates more junk, and pretty soon you've got this
cascade of
junk. Yeah.
Right. Right. Pretty funny. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Dirk. All right. Well, there's little question, I think, that the rapid advent of automation has affected pretty much every part of the manufacturing landscape, and for sure, the quality function hasn't escaped that whirlwind of change. In the article, Are You Prepared for Quality 4.0? Effy Torborg, who is the CEO of enterprise quality management software company HiQA, describes the technological and data analysis trends that are reshaping industry. The piece appeared in Wednesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. Now, manufacturers across the world are coming to understand that automated processes on the shop floor can gather a staggering amount of data, but what counts is turning that mountain of data into relevant information. The key to doing so comes from leveraging the kind of powerful tools that can help manufacturers wring the maximum insight and value out of those processes. So, to tell us more about how this works in a Quality 4.0 world, we're pleased now to welcome Effy Torborg to our show. Effy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Nice being here.
Of course. Well, let's get to this a little bit because it's interesting, I think. Why has this issue, do you think, become such an important one for manufacturers, say, in the past 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah. As a software company, we monitor the trends and we are trying to understand what is that affecting our customers and what are the type of services and automation they need at this point. So what we see in the last 10, 15 years is that the manufactured parts are getting smaller, more complex, and the precision requirements are much higher. So overall, there is a business pressure on the suppliers to provide higher quality parts. In addition, the life cycle of producing a part is expected and to be shorter. And there are different practices developed to make sure it happens, like just-in-time manufacturing or frequent short cycle manufacturing, continuous flow manufacturing. It's all about how can we conduct this iteration in a professional way that will reduce the delivery time and will improve the quality. So that's on one side. The other side, technology, robotics, the implementation of robotics further increases the pressure and the productivity, and the cost structure of my competitors is becoming better because they employ technology. They have robots working for them. Robots, don't take sick days. Potentially the cost, because we reach a certain tipping point of maturity and things become more of a commodity, the pricing also, the cost of those resources is being reduced. So if I'm competing in this marketplace and I don't employ advanced technology, I'm staying behind in some way. Overall, the compliance to meet standards is evolving to become much more strict and stringent, and the OEM providers are demanding more transparency because they don't want a SpaceX to explode and $300-400 million later to explain their investors. So overall, OEM sees today the suppliers as part of the critical part of their supply chain, and they demand those suppliers to adopt technology and automation so they can improve productivity, quality control, and meet time and reduce cost. These are the business aspects that drives the trend. Yeah.
And can you give us some examples of how software tools can help manufacturers control and extract value from all this data that is out there? I mean, I'm sure a lot of data is out there, but a lot of manufacturers may not be collecting it, or if they are collecting it, they may not even know what to do with it.
Yeah. So there are many ways automation and technology can improve productivity or provide that type of analytics and intelligence into the process. But let me give more simplistic example that which we will actually feature in the event few days from now. So we have this new customer, 700 employees, 7 facilities, They're using our product along all those facilities, and using an older technology, it took them a week to take a part that has 9 pages PDF with 1,000 characteristics. It took them a week to prepare an inspection plan from that part so they can give it to their inspectors. But the CMM programmer in the same company didn't want to wait a week. They already took the same drawing. They didn't wait to get the plan, and they started programming it. Now, after a week, the program is ready, already running. The inspectors are already inspecting the parts. The plan is ready and has all this balloon numbering, but there is no correlation between the program that the inspectors are using and the numbers of the balloon. So now, after a week, now they are taking 3-4 more days to align and reconcile manually between the numbers, the numbering system that the programmers used, and the numbering system that the plan provides. What if we can provide them the tool so the plan is ready in 2-3 hours? Then the programming is following up the same code, and the collaboration is aligned. That will bring, we calculated, and the customer told us, it took their process from 8 days to 2 days. And then now all the documentation is being reconciled in one click, and if they have a change in some of the inspection data or any non-conformance, they can update the digital information. It's not manual, it's not on paper. You don't need to run through 10 spreadsheets and update it around. You just update in one place in the database, and it populates to the entire set of documentation, and in one click, you print a new report. So just taking what is already out there, deploying it properly, and streamlining the workflow, and having the team aligned around it already can cut 70-80% of the time and improve productivity and prevent errors. So that's, I think, a great example.
And that I understand, I think in concept, I understand what you're saying. And we've got the digital workplace. You got CMMs, they use digital data. They spit out digital data. They take in digital data. You got, you got your design, which uses data. But these all may be on different platforms. So initially, it isn't an integrated system. So how do you deal with, you've got 2 or 3 different manufacturers of CMM, you've got maybe 2 or 3 different software design programs, CAD programs or whatever. How do you take all this different data from different platforms and do what you're talking about?
Right. You basically, our software or our implementation, I'm sure other vendors doing the same or heading there, is to create a centralized quality database, which has all the interfaces and the ability to collect data from the shop floor, to collect data from different parts and different facilities, and funnel all this data to one database that eventually there is no duplication, and the collaboration aspect of everyone working on the same data set is enormous. The benefits are enormous. So there need to be a unifying layer, and we accomplish that by having a database-driven application that is sophisticated enough and connected enough to interface and collect all the data to one location. And part of the trend in the last 10, 15 years is really to be able to manage a high volume of data, to be able to connect and transfer this data in a secure way between system facilities, the interoperability between different applications with protocols and application programming interface, and the ability then to take this data. So now we are getting to the higher level of where human being can, bring some value. We have all this data. We were able to collect it. Now let's make an information out of it, as you indicated, as you introduced me. Let's take all this data and develop analytics. Let's get quality under control. Let's see what are the trends. Let's stop a failing product as we see the statistics taking it out of shape. Let's be proactive and let's be ahead of the game as we manage quality.
Well, Effy, there's a lot of information there. Obviously, you've given us a good overview of this. We should let all of our users know. Of course, we have a webinar on this topic coming up, as you mentioned. And the title of the webinar, you can see it right there, is Quality 4.0, a game-changing trend. The webinar is coming up on Wednesday next week, March 14th, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And Sam Golan, who is the chairman and founder of HiQA, is going to be your presenter, and Dirk's going to be hosting. So keep an eye on your email inbox for information about how you can register for that webinar today. So Effy Torborg, thanks again for joining us on today's show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Effy.
All right, so be sure to tune into that.
That's right.
Bigger and bigger issue. We keep hearing about the the digital workplace and digital manufacturing, and it is all about how do you collect this data and, as Effy said, bring it into one place and then make use of it for your manufacturing.
Yeah, that's a really big issue. The whole issue about data versus information is one we talked about too. I mean, the mountains of data, but there's maybe very tiny little bits, strands of that within that you really need. So how do you get there is really what the topic of this webinar is going to be on Wednesday. So check one out.
Yep, check it out. Okay, well, as usual, this week we had a column from Mike Figliolo. That was really interesting. His columns are very interesting. I love the headline of this one, Define the Question Before You Solve the Problem. And actually, we could just kind of stop right here because the headline pretty much says it all. I mean, we almost don't even need to go through what he wrote because it's all right there in the headline. Define the question before you solve the problem.
And it seems so easy. Do you think about that?
Yeah.
But I know I don't do that all the time or even very often.
You assume you know what the question is.
That's
I
right.
mean, he writes, Mike writes that you must first understand the question being asked and why it's important to your stakeholder. Without clarity on why your stakeholder cares, the recommendation you generate might be useless. And in essence, the question being asked of you always isn't the real question. You have to understand the context of the question, what the questioner or the affected parties are really after before you run off and try to get them a solution. And he gives a good, if maybe simplistic example here. Suppose your boss comes to you and says, asks you, can you get me your best idea for how we can generate an incremental $1 million in profits? Great, you got it, right? You then write down and flesh out and research the first 3 ideas that come to your mind for how you can solve this problem, generate $1 million. They're great solutions, guaranteed to generate not $1, but $2 million in 6 months to a year. This is exciting stuff, right? So you run back to your boss and you present your groundbreaking, earth-shattering ideas, only to find out that he needed that $1 million in 3 weeks, 1 week of which you already burned up coming up with the ideas that he can't use.
Right.
Now, 2 people were at fault here. First, the boss should have been a little bit more specific about what he wanted, but it's your rear end that's on the line. He came to you with the question. You have to make sure that you're going to solve the problem that needs to be solved. It's up to you. It's your rear end. So make sure that you ask all the right questions and walk away with the information you need before you start looking for solutions. And very often this simple matter of asking why do you want to do this, right? The first question, why? It's okay to ask your boss why. In this case, your boss might have said, because our earnings quarter ends in 3 weeks and we have to make up a financial shortfall. Okay, well now you have 2 pieces of information you didn't have before. Number 1, you have a time frame, 3 weeks. Okay, well that's good to know. I thought I had a year, right? And also you have the context, and the context isn't what you thought it was, which was, gee, it would be nice if we had another revenue stream. Who doesn't want another revenue stream? So it isn't the boss just going, gee, it'd be nice if we made another $1 million this year. That's not the context at all. The context was, oh my gosh, our quarter is short, okay? Now you know both of those things. Now when you're thinking about solutions, you're not thinking about, hey, is there a new product or is there some way we can lean the plant? It might be a matter of, let's shift this expense from this quarter to the following quarter, right? You're not really saving money, but you are solving the question at that point. You're solving the immediate question was, we can't come up short this quarter, right? We got to do something different, okay? As Figliolo says, if you do this, you're not going to waste time on analysis that doesn't matter. All your energy is going to focus on helping your boss achieve her objective. When you build a recommendation that's mindful of the why, your odds of getting your idea approved increase tremendously. And so does your odds of keeping your job. I mean, this is just kind of common sense, and I think we all do this. You know, especially if it's from somebody who's above us. They come to us and say, "Mike, I need you to do this," and you just assume that you understand the context. Your boss has laid it all out for you. Hey, find us a way to make $1 million. Okay, we're all on board with that. But you can't assume that. You can't assume you know the whole thing. So you have to kind of get your boss's full explanation of what is behind all this, so that you can make a decision that, or make solution suggestions that make sense.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And by the way, he also suggests writing the question down. Write down what your boss wants, or even after the discussion, write down what the results of your discussion was. Because by writing it down, you're going to be able to go back to your stakeholder or the boss with something concrete and confirm that it's the question that your boss wants you to answer. If it's not what she asked, you'll be able to iterate with her and refine the question until you both agree on what the question is and what the answer should look like. So, I mean, this really sounds so common sense, but it's just something that we don't do. I mean, we don't think of doing it.
Well, and it's not, I mean, to me, the issue isn't, yes, of course, is with regard to when your boss has a directive, you want to make sure you clarify that. To me, it's even more important when your customer has that.
Oh, sure.
You know, when you're,
you know what your customer wants.
Yeah,
Right,
that's really a
Yeah,
problem because, I mean, you know, for me, I call that translation. You know, I mean, a customer says, well, I want to do an ad campaign. Okay. What do you want to see happen? And it's always like, well, I want to have more sales. Okay, well.
Okay, we all want more sales.
Right. I mean, but how are you going to make that actually work? What's the tactics that go into the broader strategy and begin to have a conversation?
Yeah, what do you expect to see out of it? I mean,
exactly. And maybe you find that what you wanted to give them as a solution, as a type of a product, isn't the one at all, because what they're saying isn't really what is going on in the background. Like you say, it's not about, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a new sales revenue, a new revenue stream for $1 million? That's great, we're expanding. Rather than, no, we need to make our numbers, we're going to be $1 million short.
We need it
Very
now.
different context. So it's
yeah.
important to ask those questions. It's a really good point.
By the way, that idea and more are from Figliolo's book, The Elegant Pitch, Create a Compelling Recommendation, Build broad support, and get it approved. We've got a picture of it there on the screen. The book spells out a straightforward process you can immediately use to get your ideas approved. So check out that book from Mike. It is on, you can just Google The Elegant Pitch. It's on Amazon, so you can find it there. So
he's a great writer.
He is a great writer.
Mike's a great writer. He's very, very, very clear in terms of describing, as you can see from that little article you just covered, very clear in describing a problem and help you find solutions for it.
Yep.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes for our off script here. So, you know, this is one of those things where it's like, well, you know, you always think you have an off script, and then life interferes. I was going to ask you about the quality parameters of daylight savings time, actually, but no, I'm not going to do that.
Thanks.
I'm not going to do that because I was like, well, it was almost as good as my groundhog one from a couple months ago. But no. Instead, what interfered, of course, was the Trump administration's tariff policy.
Right. Okay.
Kind of came in front of that. So the question really is, you know, from the narrow perspective of what the administration wants to do, and which is to kind of help U.S. steel workers.
Sure, yeah.
Steel workers, to be very clear.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, it's probable, from a certain perspective, that this is a good thing.
Sure. It sounds good. I mean, it's,
I mean, it's protectionism, and that the root of that was protection. She's trying to protect American workers.
Yeah.
But you know, the question is broad and more broadly, is this a good thing? And for those workers, this is a good thing. I mean, in the long run, is it going to not save jobs and just mean that prices are going to rise for consumers, including those workers? I mean, are they going to not be better off in the long run from this, even though they're supporting it? I mean, what do you think? I mean, you don't know. We don't know. We can't know. Is it unknowable, or is it we just don't know yet?
It depends who you talk to. I think it's unknowable. To me, from my limited knowledge and experience, granted, I think tariffs are effective when they are levied on finished products.
Right.
Okay? Because that shifts the decision of, do I want to pay more for a product that has tariff on it or not, to the customer. Do I want to pay more for a flat screen TV? Do I want to pay more for, I bought a motorcycle when there was the big 50% tariff on Japanese motorcycles in order, it was a protection for Harley, right? But I did. I paid an extra 50% because it was still cheaper than buying a Harley. But that shifted that decision making to me. When you put tariffs on raw materials, there is no decision making on the consumer. You're affecting, in the case of aluminum and steel, you're affecting raw materials for automobile, for aerospace, for construction. So a lot of steel goes in construction, right? And so that cost, the vendor is not going to absorb that extra cost of that steel. They're going to pass it on. So how much of an effect is that going to have? I don't know.
Well, it's not, I mean, and more broadly, I mean, these aren't really a lot of jobs we're talking about here, to be honest.
For steel, right.
For steel. I mean, there's really not, I mean,
so
you know, the benefits are kind of, don't look at my paper, Dirk.
Yeah, I can't cheat. I see the answer. Well, no, I mean, this gets back to a question we talk about a lot. It's kind of that utilitarianism, right? Mills. So is it? Do you look at these for what is the good for the most people? So yes, if you're a steel worker, this looks really good to you,
and it may,
right?
and
it may. Oh, I'm sure it will be for a certain amount of steel workers. This is going to be really good. That's positive for them. If the end result is that for the U.S. populace as a whole, which is millions of people, not tens of thousands of people, that this is a bad thing, then sorry, steel workers. I mean, this is the decision you're faced with anything, and not just tariffs. Anytime you pass a law, anytime you do any kind of legislation, there are winners and losers. So the question is who's the biggest one? You know, do you have more losers than winners? That's a bad decision. Do you have more winners than losers? Well, then it's a good decision. And sometimes I don't know that you can think about this and decide up front.
And tax reform is really the same way.
And tax reform is the same way.
It's the same kind of thing. And I mean, you know, just looking.
Like right now, I mean, tax reform, this is looking good. My taxes are going to be less next year.
Sure,
I'm going, sweet.
Well, and,
but
I
don't
mean,
know what the overall effect's going to be.
The job report just came out, 313,000 new jobs added in February. I mean, that was very much an overperformance of what the estimates were. So, I mean, you know, a lot of those jobs were in manufacturing and construction. So, I mean,
so you say that's a good thing.
It looks good.
It
looks good. But again, we're in the early innings of this. So long term, what's it going to mean? And you know, my question really about this is, you know, are these workers that are getting the direct benefits now? Are they going to, if prices do go up, they got to buy new cars, they got to buy air conditioners, they got to buy things that are going to be, you know, raising the prices because of the price of steel and aluminum.
My gut feeling is, for the steel workers, even long term, this is a positive.
Yeah.
I think even in the long term,
they've been hurting for a long time.
They've been hurting for a long time. So this is a
and
positive.
reinvestment in those steel mills here in the U.S. is going to be helpful too.
The bigger question is just look at one sector. Is just look at construction. If the cost of construction that uses a lot of steel, if that goes up enough, is that going to impact the construction market to the point where you start laying off construction workers, or construction workers, you know, don't get pay raises, or you know, whatever metric you want to throw on that, because that could be, even though the steel workers, I suspect, are going to do well on this. Construction industry may be hit hard enough that it would more than societally more than offset the gains that come from what the steelworkers gain. But we don't. Who knows?
These are very complex systems, so I get it. I mean,
but I think you've got to think. I think it's important to think about both sides, because I don't think people do. They just go, "Oh, steelworkers, that's awesome, great for me," which we all think that way. I mean, we all think about ourselves. I mean, that's the way it is.
Well, the other problem is it's hard sometimes to even know cause and effect. I mean, sometimes the effects are far down the line, and you don't even realize this happened back in the early part of 2018, and now in the later part of 2018 or 2019, we're seeing maybe a recession.
Yeah.
We're like, well, is tax policy, is a tariff, are all these things influencing that? And maybe we don't even tie it back to that at the time.
This would be a good question. I think we have somebody from the MEP watching this thing. It's actually a good question for them. You know, NIST has the MEP program, which helps manufacturers. It'd be interesting to know what manufacturers, other than steel manufacturers, what they think about this.
Good point.
Is it going to be a positive or negative for them? So.
All right.
Okay.
Well, went a little long on that one. That was a good conversation. So we'll be keeping an eye on that one for sure going forward. All right. Well, that is our show for this week. But before we go, we of course would like to thank this week's sponsor, Exemplar Global's International Auditor Symposium. Open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from May 7th to May 18th. The International Auditor Symposium brings you the latest quality, environmental, food safety, occupational health and safety, auditor skills, and integrated management systems information right to your computer screen. Visit online at www.exemplarglobal.org, or for more information and to register, simply click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of the video player screen right over there.
That's it. And that is it for today's show. Thanks again to Effy Torborg of High QA for joining us on today's show via Skype. Don't forget that High QA and Quality Digest are teaming up to bring you the webinar, Quality 4.0, Game-Changing Trend, on Wednesday, March 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's next week. Many of you have already registered, but if you haven't done so, we're sending out an email on Monday that will contain your cordial invitation.
That's
so
right.
Be sure you click that and join.
That's right.
And that is it for today. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week.
That's right. Have a great weekend.
So long.
Bye.